is a story about Kevin Bacon. No, not the actor. This Kevin Bacon was a young man who had completed high school and was undecided about his future. He was pursuing hairstyling and finally got into the University of Eastern Michigan and was fighting his problems with depression and self-cutting. He was a gay male and was working gigs on the side while he attended the university, and he held down brief jobs at the University Center for Gender and Sexuality in 2019. He seemed to be working towards his future. He tended to date via online sites, and he was regularly looking through Grindr. He went off one evening for a date he had found on Grindr, and the man he was going to see was Lutunsky. Lutunsky had a record with the police department in the area. On October 10th, 2019, James Carlson, age 48, called 911 claiming that he had been kidnapped and awoken in a basement. "I met this guy," Carlson said on the phone, exasperated. "I'm bi. He's cute. He hit on me. I don't know. We went out to the car and talked. We went to the store, had a soda. I woke up in the basement." Carlson told the operator he'd been chained up and freed himself using a butcher knife to cut off the leather strap that bound his wrists. He escaped the house. The butcher knife in hand, he left and stole his captor's car keys before returning to the outside road, which was a 3-mile stretch that ran near the interstate. "I never had anything happen like this," he said, told the operator. "I don't know if I was drugged or what. All I know is I ended up locked in a basement, okay? Chained in the basement. Within 10 minutes, troopers arrived to find Carlson on the side of the road." Carlson told officers the man was a stranger, but he declined to press charges. Later, he filed a federal lawsuit against Lutunsky. In it, Carlson claimed he had taken a bus from New York to Michigan explicitly to have sex with Lutunsky, but when he got there, Lutunsky would end up chaining him down in his basement and holding him captive. The court complaint read: 6 weeks after Carlson's run-in with Lutunsky, on the afternoon of November 25th, a 29-year-old man ran out of the same house and called 911. He escaped wearing a leather kilt that belonged to Lutunsky, and Lutunsky chased after him. "I'm trying to get away from this creepy guy. He had me tied up in his basement," the man told the operator, according to an audio recording released to the county. Soon after, he ran to a neighbor's home, pleading with them in the 911 audio to give him an address he could give to the police. A state trooper showed up at the neighbor's home, but once again no charges were filed. Lutunsky stated that he was only chasing the man because the leather kilt was expensive. Again, despite the frantic calls of a man complaining of being chained and held captive, police played down the seriousness and said that nobody wanted officers involved. State police officials say there was nothing they could do at the time of either incident because the two men chose not to press charges. They believe that's because the victims wanted to keep the events of those nights secret. Nobody wanted the police there. Nobody wanted to file charges. Former Michigan State Police Lieutenant David Kaiser said in January 2020, "A lot of times people have a professional life and personal life. They don't want to intertwine the two. Their personal life is very secret, very protected." Carlson's lawyer rebuked this explanation. "That's just not true, okay?" he says. "You don't call the police unless you need the police and you want them there." A representative of his clients who brought lawsuits against Michigan law enforcement agencies said the officers dropped Carlson off at a gas station with no money or way to get back home and didn't inquire any further into what happened. He suggested that had his client been not a gay man, the situation would have been treated differently. There should have been further investigation. There should have been further follow-up, he says. Just some basic police work and some basic follow-up. I think I could have changed this whole situation, and Mr. Bacon might be alive. Bacon's friends agree. How come Lutansky wasn't questioned then? Is it because it's just gay guys doing stuff in a basement? Myers asks. She brings up a point a friend made to her after Bacon's death. What would have happened if a girl was chained in a basement and ran out of there? Even if she said don't worry about it, the police would have investigated it more. In some cases where people live together or are in intimate relationships, the state can file charges on their own, but it wouldn't necessarily happen with people who just met on a casual hookup, says Trish Gerard, a prosecutor for Wayne County who handles domestic violence cases. The legislator went to great length to define a dating relationship, she says, adding that a hookup or casual meeting from an app, as was the case for Carlson and the unnamed man, wouldn't have triggered the police to force an investigation or arrest. In cases of stranger assault, such as this, however, the police have the ability to persuade victims to make a complaint. Police should investigate to the extent they are able, but there is a limit to how much a police officer can do without a complaining witness. There is also a place for the police to balance and respect the wishes of a crime victim against society's interest in pursuing criminals. One way the police can do that is persuasion, trying to convince the complaining witness to cooperate with the investigation. But even if police had launched an investigation, there are those who say it may not have made a difference because assault cases, especially those with reluctant witnesses, are often difficult to prosecute and often result in little jail time. Though in Michigan, assault convictions can carry maximum penalty of 10 years in prison and a $5,000 fine without complaining witnesses, convictions become less likely. There will always be the argument that if we had done it in the first case, that we wouldn't have the second and third case, which makes a lot of problematic assumptions. Part of the assumption that is being made is that if there had been an arrest, there would have been a prosecution. And if there had been a prosecution, there would have been a conviction. And if there had been a conviction, there would have been an incarceration. And there would have been an incarceration for enough time that he would not have interacted with the other men that he interacted with. But it's impossible to know what would have happened. Mr. Bacon, after he found a date on the internet, he got ready and left in his car about 5 p.m. The next day, after he missed Christmas breakfast with his family, his father called the police. For 3 days, friends, family, and authorities looked for Mr. Bacon. The local news stations tagged along with the search. Friends came in from Flint and other nearby towns to scout railroads, brushes, and farmland. They thought if he were dead, he would at least be in a field somewhere or out in the open. But while people searched open fields, Kevin was underground, strung up in the basement of a stone cottage in a rural area about 20 miles out of town, with his throat slit. The alleged assailant was his date, Mark Latunsky, who would quickly confess to the crime, but the details of his murder were more gruesome than his worried loved ones could imagine. When officers arrived at Latunsky's home late at night on December 27th, he answered the door in a leather kilt, according to the news. He did not appear nervous, according to the local newspaper, allowing authorities to search the house. When police found Bacon's body, lifeless and strung up in the basement, Latunsky quickly admitted to the crime. After being read his rights, he said he planned to use Bacon's blood and bones to fertilize plants on the property. He hoped to use his muscles for jerky. In fact, he had purchased a dehydrator just days after the murder. For the time being, Lutunsky had fried and eaten his testicles. He was charged with 2 felonies, homicide and mutilation of a dead body. Initially, he said his name was Wilk Olikos Vilkas. He later claimed he was really Edgar Thomas Hill from the Thomas clan of Wales, but he changed his name to Mark Lutunsky for his own protection. Long before being arrested for allegedly murdering and cannibalizing a young man, Lutunsky, a father of 4, appeared to live a normal and productive life. After graduating from college in 1991, he interned for Dates Cannibal, and 4 years later earned a master's degree in chemistry from Iowa State. The Register reported that his ex-wife, whom he married in 2001, said that he earned a good living, over $100,000 a year for a time, but his mental health began to slip. He received diagnoses on 2 occasions in 2010 and 2012. He was determined to have severe, recurrent, and chronic major depression with psychotic features, adjustment disorder with depression and anxiety with paranoid schizophrenia, and borderline personality traits, according to court records. According to reports of his divorce, his ex-wife claimed that he refused to take medication, and when he was off it, he would act erratic, watching torture films and even threatening to get rid of his children's animals. In a request for a mental evaluation, his attorney cited this slip from reality and said that the defendant was so overwhelmingly fixated on a conspiracy theory involving multiple nations and countries and involved in multiple trust accounts that he requested a forensic evaluation. Initially, Lutunsky claimed that Bacon had asked him to end his life and that he'd slit his throat as part of that agreement. But according to the Lansing Journal, the evidence showed that he took precautions to protect himself. Police recovered messages from Bacon's phone asking his date to confirm to him that he would be safe. Lutunsky's lawyer, Douglas Corwin, later tried to add a charge of assisted suicide. To assert this claim, the judge denied this request. In January 2020, Corwin entered an insanity plea for Lutunsky. That February, a judge ruled he was incapable of standing trial, but that October, the court reversed the decision, saying he was able to start trial proceedings. His trial is set to begin in July 2021. He is facing life in prison.